Joe Shane wanted the New York Giants offense to be more explosive, as did most New York Giant fans. And he did everything in his power to make this offense more explosive by adding 3 offensive weapons. Today, I want to go over Theo Johnson, the tight end from Penn State, what he's going to offer the New York Giants offense in year 1 and beyond, as we still await to hear what Darren Waller is doing. Let's see what Joe Shane had to say about his 4th round pick.
Sure, but Theo was the top player on our board. Again, I'm trying to think if there were any of these guys that we took that weren't the top player on the board at the time. We went by the board. He's a guy that last night when we left, he was sticking out for us, and you're always thinking when you come in the next morning he's going to go soon or he may not be there, and we were excited to get Theo.
I'm really excited about this prospect. He was one of my guys, and I know what you might be thinking right now, Nick. Where's the Tyler Nubin video? What about Andrew Phillips? I already had a bunch of film cut of Theo Johnson because I watched a lot of Theo Johnson before the draft, before the combine, even when he absolutely blew it up. And we should start there. Now, I'm not saying Theo Johnson is Jimmy Graham, but if you look at the screen, these two are built very similarly. And I wish we got to see more Theo Johnson at the catch point in college. According to Pro Football Focus, he only had 9 contested catches, and he caught 6 of them. That's not a huge sample size, but I will say this, and we're about to get into the tape, you're going to see beautiful natural receiving skills from this 6'6" plus 260-pound tight end. 12 personnel is going to be fun with Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson. And Theo Johnson is already, I would say, a better blocker than what Darren Waller offered, just based off sheer physics. He's a bigger, thicker individual. He's not perfect as a blocker, but he is more than functional. So with that, let's get into the tape. The Canadian-born Theo Johnson is gigantic, just a massive target over the middle of the field. If you're watching on screen right now, you see the natural receiving skills. Extend away from your frame, high point because you had to because it was a bad throw. Pluck the football out of the air, quickly tuck it, and then get north and south and try to run through some defenders who are trying to bring you down. Look, he wasn't productive in college. He never had more than 350 yards. The Penn State offense really did not put him in a position to succeed, put him in a position to leverage his unique size and athletic ability outside of in the red zone, where he was a red zone threat. Because this is somebody who you throw it up to him, he can, similar to Jimmy Graham, box some players out and use his frame. I just wish we saw that more often. A lot of this tape does suggest that he can do that. And he also has some nimble feet. I wouldn't say he's the most agile tight end, nor would I say his athletic testing resembles his play speed. I think he does not play necessarily to that level, but he's still very athletic on the field. And I think we can see more from that. I mean, this juke move was something that really caught my eye on film. You see how low he gets. You see that's a flexible athlete. He's very, very low. He's square into contact, and he is able to get so much force off of this juke, which wasn't even an outside juke. It was an inside foot juke. You can see how he's pushing off that inside foot. He pushes a little bit off the outside foot as well, but he gets a lot of force off the inside foot to jump all the way almost to the bottom of the numbers and then run into a couple players before he could fall into the end zone. But it's the natural receiving skills that really catch my eye. Yeah, I get it. He only had 77 catches, 938 yards in his entire career, 4 years at Penn State with 12 touchdowns, 7 of them coming this last year. He only had a 7.3 drop rate. But you can see throughout this tape, things of this nature. It looks simple, right? But he's running in stride, 260 pounds, over 6'6", with a defender on his hip, and he's able to just pluck it out of the air. I absolutely love seeing that. You don't see a lot of tight ends do this. You see a lot of tight ends body catch. You don't see a lot of tight ends extend away from their frame to maximize the 33-inch catch radius that they possess and use all 80 3/4 inches of his wingspan like Theo Johnson does. Can't fumble the football like he did on the ground right there. But the receiving skills on full display. And I also like how he adjusts to some footballs when they are misthrown, which they were a lot at Penn State. He saw only 100 targets through 4 seasons. But this is a tight end who can align and line. He could be that Y. He can block for you, which we'll see a little bit later on. And he could be this big slot. He could be the backside one. He has, I would say, unrealized athletic ability, something that we haven't seen quite yet on the football field. But before the combine, I said this guy is going to test very well. So it does pop up. I just don't think he has that Evan Ingram type of athletic ability that a lot of people may think that he possesses. But you got to look at it. He's like 30, almost 28 pounds heavier than Evan Ingram was when he was at the combine. Here we're going to see a little bit tight end wheel to the inside and adjusts. And I just love how smooth and coordinated this is. Look, his body is angled inward looking at the quarterback. And this throw is to the outside. Effortless transition to adjust to this football. Concentrates, hits the back shoulder. Probably a good throw by the quarterback away from this linebacker who would have hit it if it was to the inside. But Theo Johnson is coordinated enough at his size to make this look effortless. There's not a lot of tight ends who could do that. There's not a lot of 6'6" human beings who have this type of coordination to flip their hips in that manner, still concentrate, secure the football while he's getting hit, and make this catch. Look, I think he's a deceptively good route runner, and he doesn't get the credit that he deserves. There's a lot of evaluators who say, oh, he's a predictable route runner. I don't necessarily think so. Like, when he was tasked to run some creative routes, I thought he was actually pretty damn deceptive up his stem with how he was angling his body. And then he did things like this at the top of his break. You could see how number 25 is over the top of him. And I hate how the video kind of glitches out, but you still get what Theo Johnson does at the break. He is able to run a post corner here and explode off that outside foot, get the safety completely turned around, and then present his chest and have nothing but grass to work with outside the numbers. And look how much separation he creates. There's about 5 yards of separation that he created on this safety. And that was created because Theo Johnson was able to deceive that safety at the top of his break. That safety thought Theo Johnson was running over the middle of the field. He thought it was going to be a post, a dig, a curl. And the safety flipped his hips and he oriented himself and he committed to that being Theo Johnson's intentions. That is not what Theo Johnson was doing. Theo Johnson exploded back outward and created so much separation through being sneaky, being a big sneaky man running routes. You can see it here as well, although there's really no one to fake out because no one got over the top of Theo Johnson. But again, you can see the shoulders. Watch the shoulders. Watch how he bends around the linebacker, gets behind the linebacker, and then orients his body like he's going inward, puts that inside foot into the ground, and you can see how he just flips. Is he the most explosive out of his breaks? No. Is he functionally explosive for a 6'6", 260-pound tight end? Third time I'm mentioning that? Absolutely. And you don't see many 6'6", 260-pound tight ends, fourth time, operating like this or running routes like this. Looks like he's running inward. Looks like he is going to bend around and run right into where that linebacker is flowing towards the hash. But instead, goes right back outward. That safety at the top of the screen is cleared out by the number 1 receiver. Then he makes an athletic catch. Extends away from his frame. Hands catchers. Dude's got like 11-inch hands. It's incredible. I enjoy the release off the line of scrimmage from Theo Johnson on this play too. He's about 2 yards from the top of the numbers. And watch when he releases off the line of scrimmage, it's subtle, but he works towards the top of the numbers. And what does that do? He's isolated against an outside leveraged cornerback because he asks the sideline zone technique. And as Theo Johnson pushes towards the top of the numbers, that forces that cornerback to expand and gain depth and stay at the bottom of the numbers, which is going to allow Theo Johnson more time to break to the inside and work through the throwing window of the apex defender who is going to be matching number 44, which we'll see here in a little bit. We see how the defender expands to account for 44. Theo Johnson sits right in this soft spot. But you can see how the stem, the release, is angled outward towards the top of the numbers by about 2 yards, gets to the top of the numbers, and then he sinks his hips. Is it the most sudden? No. Is it functionally sudden? Of course, for that size. And I also think he gets really low here. Now, choppy steps into the break. Of course. Yes, it is. But he gets turned around and he runs into the throwing window and the ball is optimally placed away from the defenders and he catches it and he knows to get down, understanding that there's going to be defenders coming from the backside. It's a subtle thing to be excited about, but it does give you a little bit more space when you run routes into the defender's leverage when you're trying to break in the opposite direction. And if Theo Johnson did not angle outward initially, maybe that cornerback who's over the top of him would have closed towards the top of the numbers, and Theo Johnson would have had less space to operate with. Not the most sudden, but sudden enough. And that's enough for me, ladies and gentlemen. And I love this play as well. Not the use of press. Look, there were times throughout his tape where he was using his hands very well against press in the red zone. I have a play in the third quarter against Indiana, second down play, 8:44, a play against Michigan, 3rd and 7, 2:03 left in the fourth quarter. There were a couple different plays. This play, not as much. You can see how he goes to shed the safety, but the safety gets into his chest and kind of controls him. Theo Johnson is still able to get around him, but I love how Theo Johnson feels what the safety is doing, understands that this safety is not going to be in a position after contacting Theo Johnson and maintaining that contact to cover him if he spins out of this and gets inside. And that is so fluid. That is a swift move by Theo Johnson. Not to be redundant, but you don't see many big men make moves like this. And this is great footwork. That's quick. He feels that this defender is draped all over the inside of him. So he sinks his weight and then spins and pivots off of it. And there's no way this defender can guard Theo Johnson at this point. Like, to me, this is one of my favorite plays from Theo Johnson. Doesn't seem that complex, but the footwork, the balance, the coordination, the control, very difficult things to teach. You can't really teach them. That's natural. That's just naturally being an athlete. And you can see how he's able to make this catch and extend way away from his frame. The natural receiving skills, the concentration, the tracking. That is not an easy catch to make, ladies and gentlemen. That football is well in front of him. And a lot of tight ends are not making that catch. But again, he has over an 80-inch wingspan, 33-inch arms, and 11-inch hands. Or a little bit less than 11 inches, but gigantic hands. Here's another play where he's extending away from his frame. This is a little just spot route where he sinks his hips. 44 kind of panics, doesn't know if he's going outward or inward. Theo Johnson does a good job. You can see how his head kind of goes inside at this moment. If you're looking right here, he's looking at 44. That's what pauses 44. It's one of the aspects of Theo Johnson's game, I think, that are very underrated, is how he is able to keep the defender guessing at the top of his breaks. Again, not the most sudden thing in the world, but I don't really know exactly where he is going at this moment. I mean, I watched the play, so I do. But 44 obviously doesn't, because Theo Johnson looks directly at him, and you could see how that inside foot is slightly ahead of the outside foot. That should be a tip, but that's a lot to process for these defenders, especially a defender who has inside leverage attempting to wall Theo Johnson off from the inside portions of the field. And that throw is high. Theo Johnson gets hit by 44. The other defender misses him. And that is an athletic play. Catch away from your frame, tuck it in, pick up the first down. Now, as we get into the red zone, this is going to be a seam weapon. Here's one of his contested catches. Throw is behind him. Defender has no idea what is going on, but he still adjusts to the football, comes back to it, underthrown ball, and makes the catch. Release off the line of scrimmage. Solid. Just gets to the outside. This ball could have been thrown over the top of him. It would have been an easy catch for a touchdown. Instead, it's underthrown, but he's still able to adjust and secure the ball. Here on this play, cuts between two defenders, and it's middle of the field open, so bye-bye. Throw was not placed all that well again, but when you have this natural receiving ability, especially for a big tight end, you don't find many big tight ends who can catch the football like this. Now he's wide open and double clutches on this play, but you can see throughout this entire video how he catches passes and why it's translatable to the next level. Like, just like this. He's open. He has a safety bearing down, but look at it. Kind of looks like a Jordan type of pose, right? Legs open. Only one hand going up. 90s kids. Anyways, makes that catch, secures it, touchdown. It's going to be a big target over the middle of the field for whoever the Giants quarterback is. Here's one of the plays where I absolutely love how he uses his hands. Inside release, hands, feet, coordinated. Right when you win, know that you're in the red zone. You need to present the target immediately because you have this defender sitting here waiting to take your head off. If he notices, the quarterback does a good job firing this football, and the football's also almost hits the referee, but the football is out in front of Theo Johnson, making this catch a little bit difficult. Now, it had to be placed away from number 9, but Theo Johnson comes down with it again. See it on this one. Just look it right in, make the catch. Makes it look easy. Simple enough, though. We're going to see a lot of play action slide from Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson. You can see on this play, just goes for 6. So I want to get into some of Theo Johnson's blocking. He is a functional blocker. I think he's going to be an above average blocker in year 1. I wouldn't say he's a dominating blocker as a tight end quite yet. I don't know if he consistently plays up to the 260-pound size, but the plays I have here, you're going to see the upside of him. Because in a lot of these plays, you can see how he explodes low to high, rolls his hips into contact, and keeps his feet churning through the defender. I think he's a plus blocker on the move, leverages his athletic ability with his play strength to control and dominate these defensive backs in the Big Ten. Let's get into some of these plays, and we're going to start first with the play against Ohio State that I put up on Twitter that's a little bit much. So Theo Johnson absolutely annihilates this defender, this defensive back, this forced defender on a split zone type of run coming across the formation. I think the defender loses his footing a little bit, but we can ignore that because this looks like such a damaging hit. Also possibly a penalty because the defender might have slipped a little bit, but Theo Johnson, he can lay the hammer against these smaller defensive backs, and he's very good in space. So here's one play that can definitely make the highlight reel, and it's fun to kind of pass around Twitter, even though it was a negative run for the Penn State offense. But if we go through some other plays, watch how he positions himself. This is against a base defensive end on the left-hand side, takes his step, angles himself advantageously towards the outside portion of the defender, knowing that the run is going to run to the outside part of his ass. So watch how he just continuously churns through contact. I love how he exploded low into the contact, fit his hands inside. You see how they came up and underneath and gained access of this defender's chest. And now you just got to expand outward to not allow this defender to work through your outside shoulder and then end up getting to the running back, which Theo Johnson kind of loses that initially, but you could see the tenacity and the toughness, that competitive toughness that we know Joe Shane prioritized in this draft. I mean, he's talked about it every time he's spoken to the media. Watch how he is able to not allow this defender to win, despite the fact that the defender kind of works towards his outside shoulder. He just keeps churning and churning and churning and churning, and then he ends up driving him into the deck towards the end of the play. So he does not give up. He plays through the whistle, Theo Johnson, and that's going to endear himself to the New York Giants fan base. You can see against the same team right here. He's out, and he's going to be stalk blocking this defensive back. The defensive back gets momentum into contact, but watch how low Theo Johnson is, absorbs the contact, gets underneath the defender, and then lifts up. And watch the defender. His center of gravity just gets risen, and there's not a lot of strength the defender can manage. Now the defender resinks his hips, but Theo Johnson also resinks his hips and then just stands the defender up, owning the point of attack, and that pisses the defender off, as it should, because no one wants to be controlled in that manner. Here's Theo Johnson again. He's the inner blocker who takes on this Iowa Hawkeye, makes contact, just keeps his feet moving. So Theo Johnson has Y ability on the line of scrimmage. He has H-back and F ability, and he has big slot ability. And that's one of the reasons why at pick 107, this is a no-brainer, because there's so much upside. There's such a high ceiling with a player like Theo Johnson, and not just because of the incredible athletic testing or the receiving skills, but because of all these plays that we're watching right now with the blocking. Blocking is paramount in the NFL at the tight end position. We knew this last year when Daniel Bellinger was the only functional blocker that the Giants had at the tight end position, and Darren Waller and Lawrence Cage. Like, Darren Waller wasn't bad. He wasn't terrible. Lawrence Cage, he's a former wide receiver. The Giants didn't have any tight ends behind Daniel Bellinger who could block, and it really hurt them in many games, as I've discussed several times at Big Blue View and on Big Blue Banter. So on this play, you can see he's going to take on this safety. Look, tight elbows, tight hands into contact. And then watch, once he makes contact, you see him sink the hips and then roll them into the contact to drive and drive and drive and drive and drive and drive. And then the defender does a good job separating, but by that point, he can't make the tackle on number 10 because he's been driven about 5 yards off the line of scrimmage by Theo Johnson. Wide base. Good job by the tight end. Just got to control your assignment. Control your assignment and never give up. Never settle. And here, I like this play because Theo Johnson loses this. First, he makes good contact on this defender. And I love the ankle flexion. If you look at the ankles of Theo Johnson at this moment and the hips and the knees, that shows flexibility. That shows a good angular athlete. And into contact, look how low he is, 6'6". This defender he's going up against is not as tall as Theo Johnson. Theo Johnson is lower than him, has a lower hat than him. Hips are much lower at the point of contact. But to the defender's credit, the defender is able to get inside of Theo Johnson. You can see Theo Johnson makes that contact. If you look at that outside arm of Theo Johnson, he can't control with the outside arm. The defender breaks the contact, but watch how Theo Johnson recovers. He tries to refit the hand. Center of gravity and the hips are a little bit too high on the refit. So then what does Theo Johnson do? He resettles himself after the defender separates, and then he just gets to the hip and he just continuously drives. He loses, but he recovers well. And by loses, I use that kind of loosely. But you can see how the defender does a good job separating and getting to the play side. But then Theo Johnson says, nah, son, I'm going to drive through your far hip. I'm not going to allow this to happen. You might beat me, but I ain't going to allow you to beat me bad. And guess what? In the end, he Rocky Balboa'd this. He came back and he won this rep for the most part. And we're going to see Theo Johnson again. It's the wide tight end. He's going to take on this 5. Gets to the inside, gets his hips across the 5 technique's face, and then drives the 5 technique down the line of scrimmage to allow number 10 to cut back off his ass. Very good block. And these are the types of blocks that excite me. Again, it's not always like this. I don't have a lot of the negative blocks on tape here for this video. So I don't want to paint an illusion that he's always this dominant, but you can see he can be this dominant. And I do think he's going to be an above average blocker, as I said a little bit earlier, at the next level. On this play, he's going to step, take on, drive. The defender ends up shedding. One of the things we always say, man, you got to lose slow enough to be an effective blocker at the tight end position. And this is what I mean by lose slow enough. He lost, but this was plenty of time for the play to manifest. But the Michigan State defense did a good job containing number 13. And there are times where he doesn't even lose. So he's not even losing slow enough. He'll actually win. I'll take that from my tight end any day of the week, ladies and gentlemen. Here, cross the face again, get the hips across, and then just drive off the line of scrimmage. Play didn't do anything, but it's a check mark in Theo Johnson's evaluation. Check mark on his evaluation. Here, this is just showing that sometimes you can win. You don't need to be all that cute about it. Cross the face and then just box out. This is the Charles Cross special. I remember watching Charles Cross in Mississippi State back in 2022. He would do this all the time on backside runs for Mississippi State. And this is exactly what Theo Johnson does. Just use your body. It doesn't have to be pretty all the time. Just get crafty. He's a crafty route runner, especially at the top of his breaks and up his stem. He can do that as a blocker as well, as shown on the last clip. Here he just stands up, this defensive end. Gets help from 74, though. But I love the finish. I love the feet. I love the low hat. I love the hands. I want my tight ends to be annoying. Theo Johnson, he's kind of annoying as a blocker. Here we're going to see him out on the edge. Now, on plays like this, where they're to the outside and you have time to set up to the outside portion of the defender, it sucks to be a defender, and I'll always have my affinity for the defense. But you can see Theo Johnson, big, broad. Look how wide his base is at this point. There's no way that defender is going to get out there. The defender turns right into him, and he's just annihilated and eliminated. But it wasn't that big of a gain anyways. Here's another split coming across the formation. Theo Johnson makes contact and then drives. And there's a nice, fun, brief film breakdown of Theo Johnson, the new New York Giants tight end, joins a room with Daniel Bellinger, Chris Manhertz, and Jack Stoll. Under contract next year, the only 2 tight ends now are Daniel Bellinger and Theo Johnson, who I believe would form a very underrated tight end room, a 12 personnel package that can be explosive and can also run the football efficiently and effectively, because both of them are functional run blockers. That's all I'm asking for. Lose slow enough. Both of those players can win at the point of attack as blockers. It's something the New York Giants desperately needed. They lacked it last season. They did not have run blockers at the point of attack who can effectively block, and their rushing game and Saquon Barkley, it hurt them. Now they do. So hopefully Devin Singletary and Tyrone Tracy, who are going to have a video on here shortly, they can benefit from having 2 solid blockers who can hold up at the point of attack as duo blockers in the trenches. I'm excited to see how the New York Giants use Theo Johnson. I think he has untapped potential that we have not seen because of Penn State's offense, as I laid out. I think the receiving skills are certainly a plus. He is a phenomenal athlete. I'm not certain if he played to that play speed, but he still showed tantalizing athletic traits throughout his profile. And I think it's just going to be a true red zone threat. The Giants got more explosive this offseason, and that's all we can ask for. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in to this breakdown of Theo Johnson. I am Nick Falato. Please, if you have not done so already, head on over to bigblueview.com and check out all of our written content covering the NFL draft and all of these prospects. We're going to be churning out profiles and YouTube videos on these players. Thank you, everyone, and have a lovely day.